Many people perceive heights as a phobia and a real test. Just out of interest, how do these young people see them? To be honest, I was never afraid of heights. Perhaps it's due to the fact that I have no sense of self-preservation or something like that. It was just never scary. I didn't have obvious issues with heights. It was more like chills when I'm climbing. I'm scared of falling and breaking my neck, that's all. Ukrainian conquerors of summits will tell us how rock climbing is developing in Ukraine. Hello guys, hello. Introduce yourself. What are you going to tell us today? Olha, Dima, Artem, Vova will tell you about a sport and activity called rock climbing and the benefit it can bring to one's mind and body. In fact, I tried rock climbing for the first time ever 12 years ago. But after that, I had a long break from it. Then I began to turn it into a sport for myself in a consistent manner. There was a tour club where we took part in mountain hiking. One aspect of mountain hiking is climbing, and it was more teamwork with equipment training than actual climbing practice. So we tried it, and I liked it alongside my big interest in mountain hiking. It turned out more into mountaineering later on, and rock climbing is more for fitness and enjoyment. It's an interesting kind of sport with interesting movements and unconventional tasks. It differs from going to a fitness studio where you practice with the same equipment and exercises. Here you're also training your brain. I wouldn't say that it's a male sport, no. A lot of women go into climbing and perform to a decent level, so it's a universal sport. I was involved in tourism to begin with. When practicing it, I learned about rock climbing and that it is a type of sport. It was in Kryvyi Rih. I've been rock climbing for about 7 years now. At the beginning, I liked this sport because it's not boring, but monotonous, and it gives you the same. There is nothing automatic about it, and you're constantly solving certain tasks, and you need to figure out how to climb through, run and prowl, and how to twist yourself or transfer your body weight, and so on. For the first 3 years, I did not treat rock climbing seriously. I practiced for the enjoyment and interest. I didn't consider it as something to which I would dedicate my life. At this point, I have practiced for 6 years, and the last 3 of them I think were about developing training programs and work more seriously, as well as get goals and move towards them. Just like in any type of sport, people are essential, a group. Regardless of how interesting it is, you'd still want to spend time in the company of people. I'm working with people who are interesting and like-minded, shall we say. In other words, people who can teach me something, and I can follow them as role models. Nothing happens from the first attempt in rock climbing. You should spend some time, but as a result, it does justify all the time spent when it happens. I started climbing 7 years ago, perhaps because my father practiced rock climbing professionally, and I wanted to do it as well. I started in my childhood, but back then it wasn't so appealing for me, and I returned to rock climbing at a more mature age. I've had some success in it, passed the Master of Sport standards, and since then I've had more motivation. There are 3 types of rock climbing as a discipline: bouldering, speed, and lead climbing. Speed is standard climbing wall that is universal, with identical setup, built-in cling holds. Everything is the same and 2 climbers are training at the same time to reach the top. They compete to see who will climb faster. It could be a matter of seconds or milliseconds. Bouldering is climbing that takes place on rocks in the outdoors or artificial walls that are 5 meters high. Climbers practice without a belay. The only form of insurance is in the form of a thick, large mat on which a person will fall in the event of a mishap. It consists of complex technical movements and development of skills and technique. Lead climbing is something between speed and bouldering. There is a high stand, complex movements, and it involves more of an emotional response because the heights are much higher, so the fear is there. I like lead climbing more because of the emotions and adrenaline involved. There were periods when I only liked cliffs, and I saw climbing walls as a training base and waited to get to the mountains. Sometimes in winter you just get used to sporting climbing of a wall, and you don't want to visit any mountains. There are three disciplines: speed, lead, and bouldering. I'm practicing lead climbing and sometimes bouldering. Bouldering is when people climb without a belay on medium-sized heights, which is hard because you need to have strength and skill. I think you understand that speed climbing is about racing. I'm most interested in lead and bouldering because they offer the most versatile activities, and the climber's height is a significant factor in speed climbing. I'm not that tall, I would say. Height doesn't play a big part in bouldering and lead climbing. At the same time, it's more interesting. We used to visit the outdoors, and we do so now. We visited Crimea, Cherkasy, Zhytomyr regions, where there are cliffs, as well as Turkey. Cliff climbing is awesome. I could never compare climbing cliffs with climbing a wall since they are completely different activities. Of course, there are similarities, but when you climb a wall, you know where to go. I mean, there is a specific route, and you can plan and calculate it, assess what to do, which is impossible, and the road is tougher when you are on the mountains, as everything is not so clear. I don't like speed climbing that much. I tried it and was left unimpressed. I prefer lead climbing and bouldering. Lead climbing is climbing with a rope, and I can't say that I love something more because all these disciplines are unique in their own way, while being different. It's more interesting in the mountains because often you just don't always have the chance to go there regularly. So when you go there, you perceive it as something new and say to yourself, it's awesome here. Mountain cliffs are more interesting because you always have a unique route, while in halls, the cling holds are always the same, just like the reliefs are the same. But you get to the cliffs, and there's always something different. The versatility of colors on a climbing wall enable you to see and determine it easily, and you can more or less see and understand everything. On cliffs, with their natural terrain with the same colors, you look at the cliff and you might think there is a convenient hook, but when you reach it, there's nothing actually there. I like to climb mountains in competitions, but in the main, it's one discipline, bouldering. I climb and perform in all these disciplines. I'm not training in speed format, so I perform worse at it. It's no surprise that I don't like it. Climbing with a belay is not my strongest skill, but bouldering lacks both rope restrictions and a system, so if you fall, you'll land on a mat. It's because of these aspects that I train in this discipline. I'm probably more taken by the idea of climbing a wall, as I often spend a lot of time there. As a result, I perform better on a climbing wall than on mountains, but I like them equally. But if I had the opportunity to climb more often there, I definitely would. I reckon there are a few climbing walls in Ukraine, but their number is small compared to the number of fitness centers and pools. Although you can find stands, there are fewer sections, but if you want to study and get experience, you can learn and find a place where to practice. At first, I visited a climbing gym and worked with a part-time instructor. He belayed me and gave me tips and assistance. Then there was practice at a tour club, and we learned how to work in a team, operate equipment, and climb individually. We understood intuitively. I worked with a professional coach in Kryvyi Rih back then. He was a 76-year-old man. He was very experienced because he'd been a mountain climber at first and then got into rock climbing. Training sessions were difficult, but it was never my aim to become a professional athlete. So I practiced for personal enjoyment. I visit sections, not individual classes, as it's more enjoyable because the competitive spirit is present at a section. You want to perform better than others. At the beginning, I faced difficulties with bouldering, mostly with falls. I was falling the wrong way, and it so happened that I twisted my ankle or something else. It wasn't good, but I no longer have these problems. It's just fun. Me and the guys came to the gym to climb. I was a beginner, so it was hard for me. I had to practice with a rope. I didn't even know that bouldering existed. We came and climbed the same routes. It was interesting in a way, like going to a gym. Later on, when you become more familiar with the world of rock climbing, you realize where you're at and where you can get to.
Где находишься ты и куда еще можно дойти, то приходит понимание, что просто ходить и занимать, ну то есть в удовольствие, скажем так, как развлечение.
You start to understand that you won't get any big results if you go and practice simply for fun and entertainment. You start asking, reading, watching programs on the internet to develop your mind, body, character, and to raise your level.
Своего тела, там, ума и характера на то, чтобы повышать свой уровень.
You need to climb a lot. The more you practice, the more your body adapts to new movements and skills. The biggest difficulties I had were associated with injuries. At least in my case, I'd suffered a lot of injuries in rock climbing, especially to my fingers. The pressure exerted on the fingers when climbing is tremendous. Sometimes you have to balance your entire body weight on two fingertips. And so the ligaments get tired after such actions. You should find a golden mean between frequent training sessions and rest.
Если очень часто тренироваться, нужно соблюдать как бы золотую середину, уметь отдыхать тоже.
I began climbing with my father, but I always went mountaineering myself. I had some coaches back then, and that's all. I'm climbing together with my second coach, or we do joint training programs now. I started climbing 2-3 times a week. I just came to stand and worked with a rope, or simply bouldered without any significant workout, or without any special physical training, or exercises, and then it got easier. It became more interesting as I began to make progress. I started to do the correct exercises and drills. I was hanging on my fingers, strengthening my wrists. I was doing chin-ups with 2 hands and 1 hand, and so it went on like this. The number of training sessions in a week vary from 5 to 6 depending on the results that need to be achieved in competitions. We have Ukrainian prizes in speed, lead and bouldering competitions. The same goes with championships. It's all the same abroad, and sometimes they develop more interesting disciplines like deep water solo, climbing up to 15 meters and then falling into a swimming pool. It's not a separate discipline, but more of a commercial start or beautiful show. There are lots of skillful and strong athletes, but as the foundation in Ukraine is only starting to be formed, we hope the best is yet to come from it. However, the strongest athletes get to take part in the World Championship and World Cup.